And then there was a moment where I just got sick of being sad or taking on someone else's perception of me. I just hated it. Once I said, okay, this is enough. I don't care what they think. I know what I am. And I had to draw that so tightly because I started RealReal when I was 52. So the key is to know what your priorities are. Let's just say you say, okay, this is too much. I'm working full time. I'm doing this podcast. And I've got 2 young boys that are like very energetic and need me. I'm going to stop one of those things. And let's just say you do. And I'm still going to make this other thing great. Fine. You can go back. You can make a different choice later because you've already been building up that great experience. It's never too late. And do not look, I raised, I don't know, 700 million as a woman over 50 in the tech world. No one does that, right? But obviously someone does. It is up to me to create my reality.
Hey, Dream Drivers. I am so excited to bring you today's episode. We're diving deep into the power of reinvention, resilience, and redefining what's possible at any stage of life. Today's guest is none other than Julie Wainwright. She's an entrepreneur, e-commerce pioneer, and the founder of the RealReal. But before building a billion-dollar business in her 50s, Julie faced one of the most public failures in tech history, the infamous crash of Pets.com. She's going to talk about how she walked through that low moment of her life and was able to reinvent herself on her own terms. In this conversation, Julie's going to get real, like really real, about what it's like to rebuild your life after everything falls apart. We talk about her childhood, growing up with a sickly mother, and what that taught her about independence and her own dreams, the journey she took to rediscover herself and her next big idea. She even shares lessons on leadership, hiring, navigating being fired from the company she started, and the emotional work of letting go of the past to build something new. So if you've ever questioned whether it's too late to start over or felt like failure defines you, this episode is for you. Julie's story proves that your biggest setback can become the fuel for your greatest comeback. And as someone who's been on my own path of turning detours into direction, trying to figure out how to take dreams and drive to the next level and all of that, Julie's words felt like a blueprint and also a pep talk. She was so encouraging, so inspiring, and her story is a reminder that it's never too late. You don't have to have it all figured out, and sometimes your lowest moment is the setup for something greater. If you enjoy this episode, I'm going to ask you, please share it with a friend. Send this to someone who you think will really resonate from Julie's words. Make sure you're following us on social at Dreams and Drive on all social platforms. And also make sure you're signed up for our email community to get weekly email reminders straight in your inbox. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. All right, let's get into this episode and hear from Julie. Oh,
I'm so excited to be with you. Thanks.
I am super excited to have you on. I think we're going to have a great conversation. But, I love to start all our interviews going back in time. I think it's very important for us to kind of reflect on who we were as children. So tell me, who was the young Julie and what was inspiring you about the world?
So, look, I had an interesting childhood. And let me tell you the good things about it, and I'll tell you what it was. The good news about it, even though I wouldn't wish it on anyone, well, some of it I would. The good news was that it made me really resilient and capable of taking on a lot of responsibility. So when I'm the oldest of 4 kids, when I was 8, the youngest was just born. So it went, when I was 8, then my sister was 4, then my brother was like 3, and then my other sister was just born. So it went boom, 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 boom. My mom was in the hospital and we were told she was dying. And she was 28. So she was a young mom. She had 4 kids, which isn't that unusual for the times then. And my dad was 30 and he had just started his own business. She was misdiagnosed. So she lived. They thought she had encephalitis, but for but she was in the hospital for a while. And because she wasn't getting better, it's because she had multiple sclerosis, but she was misdiagnosed. But my father said to me, you're going to have to step up and help me raise the kids.
At 8 years
I
old?
was 8.
Was he serious, or was he kind of doing that in that fatherly,
No, he
I
was
need
dead serious. I think he was really stressed and really scared. He had just started his business, um, and he has like 4 little kids, and so now I took it to heart. The reality is we had someone come in and help quite a bit, but I took that to heart. Like, I've got to be, the big sister. I have to help. And my mother was properly diagnosed when I was 16. So she had a lot of other illnesses that kept occurring, which is sort of common even today with MS. It's such a weird disease. So
yeah.
when I was 8, she was properly diagnosed, and she was 36. So when I'm 16, rather, she was 36 and she was properly diagnosed. Now, that illness sort of laid heavy on the family because she had good days and bad days. And they sort of all started getting downhill from the age of 36. All right. So the good news is I had a more of a mom than my other siblings, but I also felt like I had to be the mom. Um, Having said that, my dad, and when she was good, but they were like, my dad loved his own business. He had his own art and design firm, loved it, came home every day, was happy about what he did. It was before kids had agents. So whenever he needed a child model, anyone in the neighborhood was in the ad. He would basically say, "Who wants
Where
to
did you
be
grow up, by the way?
South Bend, Indiana?" So
Okay.
he had clients like Chevrolet, he had Studebaker, he had Flintstone Vitamins, Alka-Seltzer, he had Kohler, sort of Midwest firms. But for and Shakespeare Rod Reels, but for the shoots where he needed kids, literally he would say, "Hey, you want to be on the package of Flintstone vitamins?" He'd just go over to, he would cast kids in the neighborhood, and which is sort of fun. We were all in different shoots with cars. Whenever there was a new car shoot for the brochures, he didn't do advertising, did more in-store stuff and packaging and brochures. But if there was a shoot, we'd all be at the park for the new cars and shooting them. And so that was fun. And then the other thing was fun. He had a sense of fun and a big, strong sense of life. So we all had motorcycles when we were kids, dirt bikes. We moved from the city out to
That's the Midwest life. I grew up in Jersey, so we did
that.
in northern
Well,
Jersey.
you could have had that. So we
I
had dirt,
know.
but they were licensable though. I mean, so when I was 16, I was driving a motorcycle around. We had go-karts, and then he decided, because he loved to compete, that he built a tennis court in the backyard. And at some point he had it paved over, but it was like a clay court, to get started. And he would design t-shirts that's how you got a tournament invitation, the Wainwright Invitational. He would design t-shirts. Everyone got their t-shirt in the mail. It's like, okay, we got to go play in the tournament. So there was a lot of activity and creativity. But I would say underlying was also the fact that my mother's health was always, for a long time, she just didn't know what was happening. And she kept going to the doctor, and doctors kept saying, it was harsh. They would say things like, "Well, you didn't lose your baby weight. That's why your hands are numb." It just put it in context. It was another time. They put her on speed. Can you imagine? They put her on speed to lose weight because they did that in the 70s and 80s, the 70s. So, but she was like, okay, she was, I don't know. I mean, when I look at the pictures of her, she's probably a size 8 dress. It wasn't like she was pushing it, you know what I mean? But,
Yeah.
so, um, but that was there. So it's a weird kind of lot of fun, lot of creativity, because he would bring home his art projects. We were involved in like, he'd go, "Look what we're doing now, and look what's working. That's not working." A, a man who loved his job and loved having his own company. And then my mom her life just sort of fell apart at the age of 36
You
because
know
she
what's so
never
it I'm
got better.
sorry. This
No,
is just
anyway.
making me think of parallels, like, and I'm like, I think I have guests who come on the show and we have parallels in our own life. My mom's life changed at the age of 32 in a car accident. So she was just about to get
Oh, I
into
just got
nur
goosebumps.
nursing school. She was like 1 month away from graduating from Seton Hall Nursing. And my dad and I and her were in a car accident coming back from a baby shower in New York. Car accident. She was in a coma for 6 weeks and her whole entire life changed. She was physically disabled. She wasn't able to work again. And my whole life has been this metaphor of like, my dad became like the sole provider. And, my mom became a stay-at-home mom for me and my sister, which now that I think about it, I don't think we would have had the privilege in our life if we didn't have a mom who was a stay-at-home mom. But at the same time, there's been this like, metaphor and this like presence in my own life of like having a mother who was sickly as a child and just oftentimes wishing or wondering what if for her, right? And that shaped my own life as well. I don't know if you ever felt like that, but it's
Oh,
kind of like,
you know what? Absolutely. In fact, I was just saying to someone the other day, when she died, she lived too long, to be honest, because the MS really ravaged her body and her mind. Um, so she died when she was 62, but when she died, she had dementia. She was probably a one time was about 5'6". So when she died, she was about 75, 80 pounds
wow.
because she needed to, it was just bad. But when she died, I didn't feel, no one could feel sorry that she died because she wasn't really living. But I cried. I can still cry when I think about it. The lack of she had, her life was over at 36. It was really over at 28 when she had the first signs. And it's just all that potential was lost. And she and my dad met at art school. She dropped out to marry my dad, but she had ambitions beyond being a mother, and she had the kids so early. And I just thought it was sort of profoundly sad that her life was never realized. And I would say, did that change me? Absolutely. But also, to be honest, my dad had a great time at work. He was having so much fun. And my mom's friends weren't having that much fun when you look around. They were running the kids around, doing this, doing that. So here you have someone really engaged in the work and again, engaged the whole neighborhood,
Yeah.
basically. Hey, you want to be in an ad? Do you want to do this? It was that type of communal thing. And yeah, my mom's friends didn't seem to have that joy. And then the combination of my mom's life, basically, and we knew, I knew because I was 16, her life was not going to have a good trajectory once it was diagnosed properly because she was
Yeah.
going to support groups. So, you look at it and did it propel me? It propelled me to carve out my own path. And when I graduated from college, because I'd been so involved in, being that 8-year-old who had to raise the kids, even though I didn't really, but in my head I was, um, I didn't really want to have kids right away either. I'm like, no, 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 I've done that. I've done that. Now I've got to
It's
figure out
time
what
for
I want to.
Julie to get to
Yeah,
be what she wants.
right.
Let's stay there a little bit. And I want to talk about like big failures, right? Because I know you graduated from Purdue, you launched out to, make your mark, worked your way up, and then you were CEO of pets.com and the .com crash happened and you had to respond to it. Take us through this big failure moment and what you really realized and learned about yourself during this. Because, there's a lot you could have learned about the business aspect. Okay, that's another podcast. We're talking about dreams and drive. What were you learning about yourself and your own ability to move forward when people might have wanted you to be like, part?
This was my third CEO gig, and I was a CEO to be gun to hire, right?
Mhm.
That the hard thing about that when I go back is I was married at the time, and the day I shut down Pets, he asked me for a divorce.
Did he know that that
So,
was happening that day?
oh yeah, he knew.
So this was calculated.
Um, well, I mean, because we didn't have kids, we didn't really talk about it until much
Yeah.
later. But when we did, I felt really sad for him. I mean, it was horrific that day for me. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to, but um, because I was shutting down the company, I had no idea all the negative press would hit. I had a night, I mean, it just went on and on and on. But I had, at that point, my obligation was to the shareholders and the employees. We still had money. I wasn't in a bankrupt situation. So I wanted to make sure we had job fairs for the employees, that they got some severance, that it was this orderly wind down, not a crazy, frenetic shut the doors. A reporter snuck in during the company meeting and we had to call the police that day. But I knew I was coming home to an empty house. So it was just horrible. And what I didn't know is that the press would be relentless. And socially, when I went out, if people knew who I was, they would say something pretty nasty to me. Or even if I remember, I even went into a creative writing class because I wanted to write through some of the emotions in a local bookstore. And we had to say what we did or, whatever. And I said it, and the whole class sort of turned against me. I had to leave. So it became this bigger thing. And I would say, and I was 42 and I had to make a decision about being a mom or not because we hadn't had kids. We had sort of tried, but we hadn't done extraordinary things. And so then I had to go, oh my God, now what? Do I have any eggs left? What? It became that whole thing. And that, so I shut down the company, got a divorce. That took about a year. And during that time, I was also trying to figure out about the baby thing and came to the conclusion that I didn't want to consciously be a single mom. I know people end up that way, but that wasn't something, it felt very restrictive to me. I'm sure that's a childhood throwback, but I
Yeah.
just
You
felt like
saw, like, you're like, no, it's already
I,
hard when you have.
it felt hard. And so then here's the bad news. And then I'll tell you how I got over it. I embodied that failure. I took it all in. Now, oddly enough, I knew my marriage had failed, but that didn't bother me as much as the public failure because people kept reminding me. The press kept talking about it. They're still doing it. I got a call 3 months ago from Bloomberg to talk about the 25th anniversary of the dot-com
Who is
failure.
keeping track of that? Do they have a
It's
list?
well, I mean, I'm on the top of the list, so until I die,
I
that's
know,
going
but
to
I'm
be
just saying, like, it's
it's
funny that some
insane.
reporters like, let me reach out to Julie today to.
It's unbelievable. So the bad news is I bought it hook, line, and sinker, that I was a failure, even though I had had a success up until then. And the world had changed with pets.com. So meaning that the capital dried up. So I didn't, intellectually, I knew wasn't my fault, but I'll tell you what I should have done. Even with that company, I shut it down to give money back to shareholders because I firmly believed the money would not come back in the next 2 years. But that's a belief, not reality. What I should have done and what my board should have forced me to do is keep that company going because what if the window would have opened? It had great brand awareness. I had already cut expenses to the bone. Keep it going because I could have been wrong. We all could have been wrong. Turns out we weren't wrong, but we could have been wrong
Yeah.
because the world goes through periods where they fund things and then they don't. So that was my first mistake. That was a business mistake. Personally, it took me I took some bad jobs. Uh, I went on a vacation and had some weird experiences, meaning with shamans,
I'm
with
thinking of like
shamans
Eat,
and
Pray,
things.
Love, or like, when people go to
Oh
Mexico and
my God.
get that.
No, that's what happened. Before she wrote that book, I saw that shaman. I was there before her.
That is so crazy. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break and hear from today's episode sponsor. What's up, dream drivers? Life's all about making bold moves and investing in your dreams, right? Whether you're taking on a new chapter, like welcoming a growing family, relocating to a fresh city, or stepping up to your next big adventure, you need a ride that's ready to go the distance with you. The Toyota Grand Highlander is designed with more space for people who are ready to tackle the grand challenges ahead. With advanced safety features, convenient tech, and a sophisticated look that reflects your style, it's more than just a car, it's the SUV that makes every journey fun and easy. With comfortable seating for up to 8, an available hands-free power liftgate, and your choice between gas or hybrid engine options, like the 362 horsepower Hybrid Max, this SUV is built for those who aren't afraid to go after their dreams, and it's got room to spare. The Grand Highlander is more than a spacious vehicle. It's your partner in embracing all life throws at you. From daily routines to unexpected adventures, it's up for every grand challenge. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
That is crazy that you said that. I went to Bali and met with that guy, and they call him a Belan in Bali, and you had to whisper. Like I had to ask someone, and whenever I brought it up, they would whisper. It was a whisper thing. And I went into the jungle and met with him and had like a whole session with him. I didn't study with him, but I was seeking out that kind of, I can't believe you said that. That's exactly what I did.
That's the first thing that came to mind when you said that. And I also was thinking about, I know people who have gone, I don't know how to say the word, they've done ayahuasca. How do you say that
ayahuasca?
Word? Yeah, ayahuasca.
No, I've never done, no, I've
That's
never
a whole different type of thing. That's a whole different.
But you know what? I've had sort of mystical experiences without drugs, so I've never felt the need to do drugs. Anyway, I still can't believe you said that. Anyway, I did that. And, I sort of came back to, and this is way too long. So if anybody's in a funk, let me just tell you, do not do what I did. It took me until I knew, and I took some bad jobs. And, obviously when you get a divorce, you have money, then you have half of your money. You know what I mean? So that's not good.
Especially depending upon who had more of the money and who had more,
I was the earner. I was the earner. He was a social worker, which I thought was great. But, the disparity was great. So I had to almost run out of money and realize that any work I was doing went from, I loved my work, to being soul sucking because I was getting bad opportunities. I was taking them for the money. They were never going to win. And I felt like my life was becoming sadder and sadder. And then I thought, wait, and then I had to literally, I always physically work out, but I had to exercise more, be outside more. It did help be around artists, which, because I grew up with artists, they're always sort of my muse because they're creative. They think differently. And at some point, things add on things. It's not like I sort of just woke up, but when you look back, there were a series of steps. I remember being at a baseball game and my friend was keeping the stats. And she's like, this batter's great. He's going to win for the Giants. And I'm like, his batting average is 0.35. That means he loses 65% of the time. And I'm like, I only lost once and I'm still wearing this, And then there was a moment where I just got sick of being sad or taking on someone else's perception of me. I just hated it. And it goes back to that movie Moonstruck where Cher smacks. Have you ever seen that? Because it's an old
No.
Oh my God. It is so good. Cher, her character is with Nicolas Cage, and she smacks him on the face and she's like, get over it. Because he's like whining about something.
We need someone to do that.
I had to do that to myself. But I would say, once I decided that if I live in the past, I'll bring it forward to my future. That other people don't know me. They can write whatever they want, but they don't know who I am. I know who I am. And I'm not going to listen to outside influences. And I've got a lot of life to live. Once I said, okay, this is enough. I don't care what they think. I know what I am. And I had to draw that so tightly because the press like I said, the press was still coming in. People still wanted to take me back
And this had
there.
been years later by
Oh
this
my
point.
gosh, way too long. Now, it wasn't like I didn't have good moments, but I would say I just sort of went on a bad odyssey, Like, it
But
wasn't.
you needed that odyssey, though, to get you to where you were today, though.
I
That's the big
did.
thing.
I did. I did. I really did. I mean, it was almost Homer's Odyssey. It was almost 10 years. I needed that time to recalibrate, to understand my choices I needed to make about, having children, about what I wanted out of my life, to know that I was more than just one failure. It took a while. And once I made my mind up, then I started meeting with recruiters again who told me, "You're a failure. No one's going to hire you." One in
I
particular.
was like, wait. Is there good? I was
No,
waiting for the good
no,
moment.
no good moment. So, but then I've said, okay, that's still there. I mean, this is, that's still there. I gotta either start my own company or I'm gonna have to leave the industry, which probably means leaving the state. And that was the moment when, like, I've done all this work and I listened to him and I'm like, okay, that is the reality. No one's going to offer me a good job. It is up to me to create my reality. So I'm either going to start my own company and do something great, or I'm going to do this. And I was down to 2 years of cash. I did own a home though, outright, but I took out a lien on it to get started. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to
And this is the
figure
real
it
we're
out.
talking about, right?
This is the real.
Okay, so
But
this is
but
2011 at this point.
this is what no, that was 210.
Okay.
When I'm like, when I go, okay, enough. I started it in 2011, mid-year. So but I got switched on. So here's what I did. I did a whole map of what Amazon's really good at and what they're bad at. And one of the categories I had that they're bad at and never be able to do is luxury. But in my head, I'm like, but I'm not going to do a luxury brand. I mean, I'm not going to create a new one, but I still had it in my head, but I sort of put it on the shelf. Like, I won't do that. So I'm shopping with a girlfriend, by the way. And I also explored doing beauty. I thought there's no good competitive boundary around that. Clean beauty, which by the way, doesn't really exist, sadly. I really wanted to do, if I was going to do something, I really wanted to do something good like that. Or cleaning products, which there are a few, because my background at Clorox, I was in Clorox and brand management. And I thought, okay, but I really want it to be an internet brand, and it's really hard to get that message across. So then,
Especially because that's more of like a retail, like, in-store purchase that people are doing for cleaning products.
And I had a lot of experience that way, but it felt like going backward, not embracing e-commerce. So then I'm like, okay, I have no ideas, and I should have been panicked. I wasn't panicked. I'm like, no, I'm in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. So I'm shopping with a girlfriend. We're in a beautiful little boutique that has consignment in the back. That's where she shopped. It was full price in the front. The woman called it the vault. We get out, and I'm like, and this woman's a venture capitalist. She has a lot of money. But she bought previously owned things. We get out. I'm like, what just happened here? What happened? And I said, I've never seen you walk in a consignment store. She goes, no, I wouldn't. I don't like them. But I said, but you bought consignment. And she goes, who cares? I bought things that are beautiful. I bought, Prada, Gucci, Louis Vuitton at a great price. And I'm like, well, how do you know they're real? She goes, I trust the owner. She knows who gave these to her. And by the way, and that vault area was beautifully displayed. So they looked new, even though they were all previously owned. So I walked out. I'm like, okay, the merchant did not break the romance of the brand. She really treated those brands and those products with beauty and with care. My friend trusted the owner. Trust is important. I asked her if she'd ever shop on eBay. She said, no, too many fakes. Okay, boom. eBay was the main source. Why she'd never shopped in a consignment store. Bad experience, not beautiful. I don't want to sort through all the bad stuff.
She wanted that premium experience still.
She wanted to, she didn't want to sort through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. All right. Then I said, have you ever consigned? She goes, no, it's too hard. I had the whole structure of the business. I knew it that night. I called the owner of that shop the next day and I said, Lori, do you want to meet? Do you want to meet? I think this isn't, because she'd been a tech person. I'm a tech person. And she goes, I really think this is for the internet. We just have to solve the supply thing. And, we have to authentic. I had it all laid out. She's like, I just don't have time now. I'm like, okay. So by the time she got back to me, now it's because it was November when, it was the holidays. And anyway, so by the time she got back to me, I had a name. I'd raised $100K and I was going full tilt. I was full tilt. That was in early March of 2010. And I launched in June of 2011. So I knew it was going to work. I had one employee then. Her name was Rati Sahi. Now it's Rati Levesque. She's married. But when I hired her,
wasn't she she became the CEO, right?
Yes. Thank goodness. So she was like a local. She ran a local brick and mortar store, young at the time. Now we're all older, but she ran a brick and mortar store that had a little consignment in the back. She had been noted different online fashion blogs about her ability to curate and her merchandising ability. And I knew that's what I needed because I'm not a merchant. I knew we had to make it cool and beautiful, but I knew I'm not cool. I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? You need a good merch.
You need a partner. And I think that's a lot. That's also, you knew that you needed to bring in someone who could do that well, and you could focus on the part that you did well.
Right. Exactly. And I also knew that I couldn't, that was so important that it had to look beautiful and relevant. And so could I have hacked my way into it? Yeah, but real fashion people would have known the difference. So, so she shut her store down. I could only pay her $2K a month. I said, I don't have any money. I wasn't paying myself. We worked out of my house for like 6 weeks. And then I rented like the most, it was very functional, a 2,500 square foot little warehouse in a pretty bad neighborhood that you didn't want to leave too late and you didn't want to come in too early, but it worked. It wasn't far from UPS and it was gross, but we didn't care. Well, it was sort of a problem when when we tried to recruit people because it was.
You're like, wait, where are we going? Where does Julie have us going?
I don't know. They would be like, one person looked in, she goes, that's not for me. But you know what? Anyway, so that was the first warehouse, and it had a little area for photography. It was so small that the bathroom door had to be open the whole time, so the guy could step into the bathroom and then take a good shot. Someone had to always they had to do the editing. We had an area in the back for storage, pick, pack, and ship. The front was all for skewing the product, authenticating. And at some point when we moved, which we moved a little late, it was about a year later, literally it was like we were hoarders. Like you had to weave your way around to get out of the building. But honestly, there's so many good stories. The biggest challenge during that, the first year we did 10 million in sales, and there's so many challenges along the way. The first one was, how do we get great supply? Because it was all about the product. Whoever is doing any business, it's all about your product. I don't care if it's a service. I don't care if it's a real product. If that product isn't good, you cannot put the lipstick on the pig because you may get one order, you'll never get the reorder. So I had this brilliant idea. It was brilliant and then it didn't. I thought it wasn't working. I thought, I'm going to go meet with stylists, and we're going to meet with stylists in LA. And I'm going to tell them about our service. We'll give them a percent of the sales. And we're going to get in clients that aggregate, big supply.
Yeah.
So I went down, I was probably down there at least one day a week for weeks. When Rati was back doing everything with like an intern, literally when the photographer quit, she had to take the pictures and then edit the photos. So answer the phone. So I was down there, and then I'm like, okay, we were emailing large stylist agents. We were bombing people with postcards in the mail.
You were excited though. It seems like you had a lot of passion and you were truly excited about the future of the business at this point.
Oh, I knew it was going to work because if we could solve the supply problem, the first sale sold out in literally 20 minutes and there were only 30 items and they were gone.
I have a
And we
question
did,
for you, Julie, though. What
yes,
if you are at this stage of your business and you're not getting any of that? Like, is there a point in the beginning stages where you need to reconsider if you're not getting any traction?
yes. I mean, honestly, I've seen it over and over again. And it's really, you have to, you can't believe your own press. So even you can't even believe your own idea. So like when I was out there selling it, I'm like, no, here's why it's going to work. And it's this, this, and this. But if we wouldn't have gotten any sales, then I'd say, oh, I priced too high. Maybe that's the problem. Or maybe so I try to tweak it real time because, I was watching it real time. So maybe I priced too high or maybe the pictures weren't good. So the first step I would take is looking at my premise is still right, but I missed some of the details. So, then go at it again. And then the next thing, let's say I correct all those things and then it still doesn't work, I'd be like, my premise is wrong. But my first thing is I wouldn't give up on the premise. I would try to understand around the edges. And now there's so much data that you can use real time when you put something out to see if it's good or not. But if you tweak it and you try to get it right, then it could be you're just wrong. And then you're like, okay, now it's really time for a pivot. And what can I salvage? What can I salvage? But it may take you, maybe 3 times to try to tweak it. But after that, you probably are just in trouble. But my bet is, see, all you have to be is 51% right. All right, that's it. If
Why?
you're 50, because if you're 51% right, whatever you do, then you can then get it to it's that 80% right. But as a starting point, if you're 51% right, you're going to see some success. That's all you need. So you can't go in with a perfection mindset. You have to go, I'm going to get it mostly right. I'm going to do all I can to get it mostly right. And then I'm going to iterate up. But if you're not at least 51% right, then you've got to figure out, you may have to do a hard stop. And you know what? It is the hardest thing. And I've seen it time and time again to know when to fold it. But you probably learned something. All right. So that's the other thing. You probably learned something that informs you the next time, that informs your whatever job you do next, whatever you do. Chances are you learned a lot. So you've also got to contextualize that properly, which, by the way, I didn't do with pets.com. But like, don't do that. Don't do that. Do this. Anyway.
No, this is, I know that we could probably talk so much about it, but I would love for you to talk about, I think, when you became attached to like this huge company and went public, right? You guys are valued at over $1 billion and then you leave. I know there's a story behind why you left, right? How did you feel during the moment when you had to like walk away from this dream that you had put into fruition and built? And what was that feeling moving out of it?
So first of all, the good news is everyone made some money, all right, on the IPO, including me. But I did not choose to leave. The board fired me. And I was very, very busy running the company. And in the background, by the way, I don't have a political bone in my body, so I'm not sensitive to politics. I had a new CFO who had come in, who I thought he was great, really needed a new CFO, public CFO, could help reimagine the business. We're coming out of COVID. It was so hard on the business.
Yeah,
and
I have another side story for you. I have my partner actually, he's a photographer, and you know how like photographers, they need jobs that have health insurance. Like he was a photographer at his side gig was doing the RealReal in Secaucus. He did like the luxury fashion.
Oh my God. Did you ever go in there? Did you ever go in and see it?
I saw the outside of it, but he always talked about how he learned so much. But during the pandemic, they had to let so many people go because the pandemic happened.
We couldn't pick up product. Do you remember that? The
I
real world
wouldn't
is
know, but like he
no,
just
but I don't know if he would have done, but we couldn't. That was the problem. It's not a self-posting site.
yeah.
So the business was growing 40% versus year ago. And then we were 40% down. There was an 80-point swing right then. And we couldn't pick up products. We couldn't go to people's homes.
Yeah.
We didn't have a store open to take product.
Yeah. Sorry for
And
derailing your
no,
conversation.
no,
I just
no,
wanted to
no,
let you
but
know.
you know what? It was really treacherous. So we're coming out of that. We ended the COVID year, down 5% versus year ago, but it was a miracle that we did that. The next year we were in growth mode. We got a new CFO, which I really wanted. I'm busy. He's like, Julie, something's wrong. There's like a troika, we called it the troika, working against you. He goes, I really think it's this guy, who didn't get his money out, by the way. It was the last investor, but and by the way, my board was pretty much a new board because the old investors, except for him, had gotten off to sell the stock. So I recommended these new people. So the board wasn't up to speed on the company. I was too busy trying to pull the company up, not just me alone, but 3 people working against me. He goes, I'm pretty sure this is not good. And I'm like, so I remember thinking, maybe this guy, I didn't know him. Maybe he's paranoid, right? He could be just a paranoid guy. I don't know what's going on and in fact, he was very astute. So my theory, because here's what they told me when they fired me. Oh, we have to fire you. You didn't make
And
your
that's the
money.
sad thing when you make your company public, they can, right? Like your board.
Well, you can get fired
Yeah.
anytime, but I mean, that's just the prerogative. But what they said is I didn't make my numbers during COVID. Literally, that was the excuse. But my theory is, oh yeah, it's bullshit. So my theory is complete bullshit. My theory is this guy who didn't get off the board to sell his stock, lost value because the stock dropped down to about 5, 6 maybe. So he was losing money and he thought he could bring in someone better to run the company. And he worked against me. And I did not help myself. So, because I called him very choice words, including a liar in a board meeting, had a meltdown because he was lying. And then the new
This was
board
your
members,
baby. Like you had
I
gone
know,
through so much.
but you know what? I got to tell you, no one wants to hear a woman get mad and yell and lose her power. I lost my power when I yelled, and no one, if I was a man, they would have, I mean, honestly, I know this is a sexist statement, but no one likes to hear a woman lose her shit. They don't. They don't like to hear
You're
an
now
angry
labeled,
woman.
right? You became
And
labeled.
well, also the women came down on me, these new board member women, one who was part of the invisible troika. So I thought my CFO was paranoid. He was astute. There was a movement. And then I totally lost respect for them because then it was just they were trying to set me up in all these ways, and they fired me 4 months later. So what happened? It was horrible. It was gut wrenching. I knew they were going to bring in somebody who had less experience, who they did. I knew it was going to be a man, and it was. He ended up being terminated, and then Rachi got the job. So I'm happy about that. But the company had to go through its bad transition. For me, I happily visualized something bad happening to all the board members for about 6 months, and I felt good about that. And then it was a waste of my energy because it's not, there's nothing I could do about it. But it didn't, I have to say though, just like when I got a divorce, I sort of visualized bad things happening to him. And then I got over it because it was just, when things are taken away from you, when you have no power, you've got to reclaim it some way. And I didn't want to do it physically. So mentally, I had a little fun with it. And then I let it go because it wasn't serving me. And there you go. And I have to say, writing the book was so cathartic. But it was also 99% of it was amazing. All right. Amazing. This is a bad footnote. Right
You
around
mean
that time,
99% of your story or 99% of the real part?
90% of doing the RealReal was
Okay.
amazing. Even when things weren't great, I knew they'd be okay. and building something from an idea in your kitchen to over $1 billion is and taking it public is fabulous. The people in general, some of the best people in the world, so much fun, hard work, always hard work. And the way it ended was sad for me, but you can't take away the fact that I did it.
And
So,
your name will forever be synonymous with building it and putting it into the world.
and it's a good thing in the world because it is about recirculating goods and it is good for the planet. It also made me happy that the guy they brought in who had never been a CEO, was unemployed at the time, had never run a public company because he'd never been a CEO, and was the board's choice and worked with one of the board members before, is no longer there. That made me happy. So, you know what? All I know is some things you can't control and some things you can. And what I could control, I did it really, really well. And then what I could control when I got fired was my attitude going forward because life is short. But I also took time to grieve because you know what? You cannot suppress that stuff. If you suppress it, it pops out somewhere else. And it's usually not it's in an unintentioned way. You may get mad at someone who you shouldn't, had nothing to do with anything,
Yeah.
you know? So you gotta take time and honor a grieving process, which
And
I
that's like
did.
life in general, right? Like just letting yourself go through the motions. But, I have a question for you, Julie. Looking back, and I'm calling this your dream driving journey, right? Up until this point, what do you think was the biggest thing you had to learn about one, running a business in general, like biggest lesson, and then about running yourself? Right? Because I think that's the big thing for a lot of us. I've spoken to so many different entrepreneurs, and they always say the business stuff you'll figure out, but like it's you
Oh, but you
that,
know what? I did it so late in life that I was so focused that I didn't really have relationships fell to the wayside. I lost 2 guys I was dating. I was okay with that. So, but because I knew what I was doing. I knew what I needed in my life. I knew I was focused. And so was it sad? It was, but it wasn't. Could I have changed that? Maybe, but I didn't.
Mhm.
But I'm like, no, no, no. This is me. This is what I need to do. And I felt good about what I was doing and I knew I was honoring myself. So I didn't have to control my emotions. I would say my big mistake that I would say to anyone when they hire the group, my world had been technology, and technology in general is a collaborative business. And also, startups and high growth companies are more about a meritocracy than they are about politics because everyone matters. And they either can do the job, I don't care what your job is. When the company's growing fast, everyone matters.
Yeah.
And, you know, the jobs should be defined, and so then they get rewarded based on what they do. In a corporation, it's a political game because businesses aren't growing as fast, and people still are ambitious. They want to get ahead. So I would say my worldview has been shaped by trying to build more of a meritocracy at all times, working in a collaborative environment, honoring certain values are really important within that: integrity, honesty, good communication, direct communication. Um, and the people I recommended for the board did not put that one guy aside who was the last money in, did not share those values and had never experienced anything. And so I would say my big lesson is values really matter. It never occurred to me, by the way, that they wouldn't have those values because my worldview, it never occurred to me. But at the end of the day, when you hire someone, their values matter. In the company, when we made a mistake and hired people that were building their personal brand or something, they spun out because they
Mhm.
weren't doing the job. But on the board, I should have used the same value-driven decision, and I didn't. I was naive. I know it sounds silly because I'm not young, but I was naive. I didn't realize how and it's an honor to work in an environment where it is more merit driven, where it is collaborative, where you do try to honor the process of collaboration and where it is honest and direct communication. Um, but that's not really how the world works. And the people I brought on the board did not share those values. The people I recommended for the board were far from it.
Thank you for sharing that and just being open and honest because, like, here you are, seasoned veteran executive, but still had to learn this lesson that hopefully now in your new company, right, you're making sure that you're
I,
not making
I,
that mistake.
you know what? I just think it's the same with friends. When you see people and you're like, wow, I didn't realize that's their value system,
I
when you really
always
get
say
to
that too,
know.
like, you never know somebody or, like, you never know like, even with becoming a parent, right? You don't realize what you value until you have to teach someone else, like, what they should be valuing. So it's something like with shaping a child or just realizing, "Wait, we grew up differently," but you don't realize people
No.
are how they are until they are in a certain situation, and some things, honestly, you can't always test for, you can't always ask them, it's really about how they perform in that moment.
How they show up. You are so right, because if
Yeah,
you
and it's
asked people, they'd like, "Oh, I'm this, I'm that." And then you're like, "Okay, but you aren't." But you aren't. Let's just
and
look at what you do versus what you say. And
I'm learning
that
that now.
but it never stops, because first of all, I'm not sure people know themselves that well and their values till they're tested. And I saw that with pets.com. I had a lot of people that wanted to know me when I was riding high. And then I used to say, which is pretty funny, now because I ran the real real, I think things got real after pets failed, and it's like, and then things did really get real. So I would say that's just a life lesson. And I'm sorry I had to, it ended up not serving me to have to learn it, but, um, it was tough. Having said that, I think I don't know if any founder knows when it's time to leave, but I do know myself well enough to know that if someone started that dialogue with me, I would have engaged in that dialogue. And the reason I would have engaged in it is I also knew Rachi could run the company. That I wasn't gonna I knew that. I knew because she had tremendous capacity, and I knew there was absolutely no doubt that maybe and was better in so many things than I was. She just wasn't also what I was. There's always a gap, a skill gap, but I would have engaged in that conversation. I never had the opportunity. So that's too bad. But I don't think anyone ever wants to leave something they created.
Yeah, I could only imagine. It's kind of like, it's like when your kid goes off to college and now you have to, like, figure out who you are again, right?
You're gonna have that times two.
I have a lot more years, hopefully. They don't go to college super early. But as we wind down, Julie, I would love to know, like, what's exciting you now, right? And if you don't mind me sharing, only because it's public knowledge, right? We can Google your age. You are in your mid
Oh, I get
60s, right?
yeah, I'm old,
Um,
baby.
and I think as somebody so I just turned 34 a few days ago, and just knowing that there's still so much life left,
Oh my
right? Like,
gosh, you are
if you could
just at the beginning. You are so here's yeah, no, here's the cool thing. And women have a different set of issues because, like, you have to worry about like your kids, you have kids, you have to worry about your parents probably at some point. And it's just there's just more required of you, you know, um, and you have to make choices. And I would say the beautiful thing, because you're building up a great set of experiences right now. The beautiful thing is you can always do something else later that builds on all that experience. And the key is because I started real when I was 52. So the key is to know what your priorities are. And let's just say you say, okay, this is too much. I'm working full time. I'm doing this podcast. And I've got two young boys that are like very energetic and need me. I'm going to stop one of those things. And let's just say you do. Let's just say you do. and I'm still going to make this other thing great. Fine. You can go back. You can make a different choice later because you've already been building up that great experience. It's never too late. And do not look, I raised, I don't know, 700 million as a woman over 50 in the tech world. No one does that, right? But that's me. But okay, but obviously someone does. So instead of looking at what no one's done before me, I thought, well, why not? I can do it. Sure, I can do it. So you just stay focused on your values, know what your priorities are, and never let age define you because it shouldn't. What will define you if you don't take care of yourself is your health. So, I mean, I see it time and time again. Look, I have a lot of energy. I am going strong and I'm really, really healthy. It's because I take care of myself. But, you could have something like what happened to your mom, what happened to my mom. That's things happen, right? Stuff happens. So even then, and I've thought about this a lot with my mom, but the MS did go to her brain. But I thought, if I got MS, because there's a little bit of causality, although I'm probably out of it, would I have made different choices than she did? Because she did sort of give up after she went to a couple of the meetings with people that had to be fed anyway, it
That's how
just
I feel
like,
about my mom as well. I don't think I have that give up gene in me, but who knows? Who knows? Sometimes you never know what will happen.
I mean, you never know. But all I know is if you believe it and you set goals and you learn all the time and you stay healthy, you can do it. You can do it anytime. Do not let people define you. That's got to be the main lesson. You define you. Do not let others define you. That doesn't mean you don't listen to people who you respect, but you know you more, period. You know you more.
I needed this. I really needed this in ways you don't even know because I'm going through this whole motion of like, I've been doing it since 2016, but I think I've always been playing it at this like consistent level. Like, putting out every week. It's performing the same year over year over year. And I'm like, something has to move around if I want to take it from here to here, right? And I think there's been this fear holding me back. Been this like, let's keep the steady 9 to 5 as your stable, insurance and everything else. But at some
Yep.
point, you have to just, put that all into something or I don't know. That's just been the thing that I've been thinking about is like what will take it to the next level because I think I'm capable. I know I'm capable. I perform well at, the full-time job, but it's more about what is going to be that thing that like I just go hard on it and see the results, but also knowing my kids are still young. So maybe it doesn't have to happen right now, but I'm planting the seed.
Exactly.
And being
Exactly. But
okay
the
with that, because
fact
my
that
health does come right. Because I think if I, was trying to do everything, I would go crazy, and then I would not be in good health either. So it's like a
no,
balance.
set your priority. There's no balance in life. Set your priorities. There's no balance. But no. But set your priorities, live those priorities and evaluate it. And and it's never too late. I don't know. I just think, and also here's the other thing, which I really believe you will find out that lever to take it to another level. And you'll find it out when you're ready. You're going to find it out. I'm sure you can do it. And then you'll figure it out. And so you need to give yourself space
And I'm
because
only 34. I say that. I'm like, you're still young. You don't need
I
to,
know, you know what? Can I just tell you? Because it's always fun when you hear that. No, you're good. You're going to be great. When I was 27, I moved to 26 or 27. I moved to Europe with one other person to set up international for a software company. And I lived in London. I knew no one.
Mhm.
And I was in Paris, Barcelona, Milan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Auckland, Sydney, and Sao Paulo all the time. And my boss got fired. So there I was living in London, doing all this, flying all over. And when I look back on that, I'm like, who put a 27-year-old in charge of international? And so all I would say is opportunities present themselves, take the risk. It built my life differently, by the way, just by having that experience. And there's time. The other thing is you're playing the long game. Think about that. Your career is the long game, not the short game. You've already had success, but think about it. I'm in here for the long run because you can do what you want to do as long as you want to do it. And it seems like you're too curious to just sit at home and do nothing. But don't.
Yeah, and that's like I'm building relationships. Like this is what that's 400 guests that I have access to that I can, once I do have that lever, then I can kind of pull it. So it's like, it is the long
when
game.
you're ready.
Thinking about
think of the long game, and when you're ready, and like I said before, quality product matters, and you're delivering quality product. You're gonna figure it out, but don't put pressure on you. You got a lot.
And it'll all come together. And it's like, I'm building I have my Santa bag. I just had to get to the sleigh, right? And that's
you'll be good. You're good. I just know it. I know you're going to be good. And I listen to your podcast. No, I listen to podcasts. I'm like, oh, she's got it.
Thank you. Yeah. And I just get sometimes discouraged when I go on social media and I see these people who you have the celebrities in their podcast, and I'm just like, you know what? They have the money, they have the brands who are throwing the dollars and throwing the marketing stuff. But I know that inherently I'm a great interviewer, and inherently I know how to get people to open up and to talk about things hopefully they never talked about before. And that's a skill set that is transferable to wherever I go. And I know that I'll be good wherever I go.
No, you are good. So hold that.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. This has been a delight. And I love to talk, but we will chat more. And just thank you so much, Julie, for sharing your story. And I'll also link to your book because it comes out when?
June 10th. It ships.
Okay. All
Time
right.
to get real. Time to get real. Thank you.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 428 with Julie Wainwright. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please stop what you're doing right now and send it to someone. Share this with your community. Post it on LinkedIn. Post it on your X account, your Instagram page. Make a TikTok reel about it. I don't know. Post your favorite clip. Just send this to someone. Send it via text. I count on you guys to help keep the Dreams and Drive community going. So please, 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 your sharing will do a great deal of community building on the back end. Also, make sure you're following us on social. You can find us at Dreams and Drive on all social media platforms. And if you want to be on our email list, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up today. I appreciate you guys tuning in every week. I am doing my best to make sure we're coming out consistently, giving you guys great content, great interviews. So please, please, please continue to stay engaged. I appreciate all y'all who are always in my inboxes, who are always just giving great feedback and letting me know that the Dreams and Drive community is still going strong. As always, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in the next episode. Bye, guys.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.